Hi, my name is Sufi Awatif binti Sani Amril with the metric number of 078631.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Amshah bin Muhammad Isa and my matrix numbers is 076384.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Fakia Sajida binti Nuzaidi with metric number 076561.
Salam Sejahtera, my name is Crystal Chong Kaying with the matrix number of 076789.
Good day, I'm Chia Gek Zing and my matrix number is 078309.
My name is Fakira Shakila binti Fadli and my number matric is 078282.
My name is Nur Alia Kristina binti Rizalman and my metric number is 078690.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Yasmin Syafiqah binti Asma Lizan and my metric number is 076979.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. I be to Madam Nur Amani. My name is Muhammad Akid Iz bin Zulkifli and my matrix number is 078398.
The case of the Gambia against Myanmar was initiated on 11 November 2019, represent a landmark case in international law addressing the allegations of Myanmar violate the Genocide Convention 1948 against the Rohingya people. This case was brought by the Gambia, which is the state party to the convention, act in its capacity as a non-injured state, invoking the principle of erga omnes partes, where the obligations under the convention are owed collectively to all its parties. So these assertions is grounded in Article 9 of the Genocide Convention, which provides the ICJ with jurisdiction over disputes between state parties regarding the interpretation, applications, or fulfillment of the convention. So with the support of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the Gambia filed its application to the ICJ, accusing Myanmar of violating parliamentary norms or jus cogens by engaging in genocidal acts against the Rohingya minority in Rakhine State. These alleged acts include mass killings, sexual violence, forced displacement, and destruction of property, all purportedly carried out with the intention and as defined in Article 2 of the Genocide Convention. The jurisdiction of ICJ was contested by Myanmar in this case, arguing that the Gambia lacked standing and there was no dispute between the parties at the time of the application. In its order on provisional measures issued on 23 January 2020, the ICJ invoked Article 41 of its statute to impose binding obligations on Myanmar. So the legal term in this case include the non-injured parties. It refers to the party that brought the case not because it directly affected by it, but based on its legal standing to enforce obligation owed erga omnes partes. The meaning of obligations erga omnes partes is the obligation owed by state to all parties of the convention.
My name is Fakira and now I will briefly discuss the principles of erga omnes partes and the concept of actio popularis. These are the three important ideas in international law that addresses global responsibilities and collective obligations. Firstly, erga omnes obligations are duties owed to the entire international community, protecting universal values like the prohibition of genocide and slavery. This can be referred to the case of Barcelona Traction 1970, where it introduced this concept to safeguard fundamental rights. Omnes partes, on the other hand, focuses on treaty-based obligations shared by all state parties. In the case of the Gambia against Myanmar 2020, the ICJ upheld this principle, allowing the Gambia to act under the Genocide Convention without proving direct harm, emphasizing shared legal interests. Now, turning briefly to actio popularis, this concept suggests an unrestricted right for any state or individual to bring claims on behalf of the global community. While compelling in theory, the ICJ rejected it in the Southwest Africa case, favoring the more structured framework of erga omnes partes. In conclusion, these principles highlight the evolving mechanism for addressing collective concerns in international law, reinforcing shared responsibility and the protection of fundamental values.
The first issue is how has the court's approach to the issue of the standing of non-injured or non-directly injured states evolved? Myanmar's first preliminary objection claims the court lacks jurisdiction, alleging the Gambia is acting as a proxy for the OIC. The court grounds its jurisdiction on the statute of the International Court of Justice and the UN Charter, confirming that the Gambia, as an UN member, it meets the requirement for bringing a case. Myanmar argues that the OIC as a non-state entity cannot invoke the Genocide Convention's compromissory clause. However, the court finds that the Gambia independently initiate the proceedings as a state party to the Genocide Convention. Myanmar's second preliminary objection challenged the Gambia standing, claiming it lacks individual legal interest as it is not an injured state. The court highlights that the Genocide Convention creates a common interest among state parties in preventing genocide, allowing any state to invoke responsibility for breach. Myanmar's argument based on Article 44A of the ILC's article on state responsibility is dismissed. as the court emphasized standing under the convention is based on collective interest, not individual injury. Article 9 of the Genocide Convention permits any contracting party to bring disputes before the court without further restrictions. The court concludes the Gambia has standing to bring claims, dismissing Myanmar's second objection. Myanmar's third preliminary objection concerns its reservation to Article 8 of the Genocide Convention, which allows contracting parties to call upon UN organs for genocide prevention and suppression. Myanmar argues this reservation exempts it from Article 8. However, the court notes that Myanmar has made no reservation to Article 9, which governs the submission of dispute to the ICJ. Article 9 specifies that dispute regarding the Convention's interpretation, application, or fulfillment, including state responsibility for genocide, it may be brought before the court by any contracting party. Myanmar's reservation to Article 8 does not impact the Gambia's right to invoke Article 9. The court determines it has jurisdiction to hear the case. Myanmar's fourth preliminary objection questioned whether a dispute existed between Myanmar and the Gambia under the Genocide Convention. The court reviewed the UN Human Rights Council's 2019 fact-finding mission, which identified Myanmar's responsibility for genocide and supported the Gambia's effort. The Gambia's 2019 note verbal accused Myanmar of violating the Genocide Convention, but Myanmar did not respond. The court rejected this, stating that silence could imply rejection of claim. The court concluded that a dispute existed at the time of the Gambia's application and dismissed Myanmar's objection.
Today, I'll be discussing the responsibility of Myanmar for its militarist actions under the responsibility of states for internationally wrongful acts 2001 RCWA. This framework codifies the principles that ensure states are held accountable for violations of international law. One of the main issues in this case is whether Myanmar's military actions can be attributed to the state itself. Article 1 of RCWA lays down the fundamental rule, which is any internationally wrongful act by a state entails its responsibility under international law. Building on this, Article 2 explains that two conditions must be met for state responsibility to rights, which is the act must be attributable to the state under international law, and second, the act must breach the international obligations. Now we move to the key principles of attributions, which is Article 4 states that actions by state organs, including Myanmar's military, are attributed to the state. Article 7 clarifies that even if agents act beyond authority, their actions are still attributed to the state. So, in the case in Dixon Cowell Company, the tribunal confirmed that the state is responsible for acts imputed to it. In the case of claims of Italian national residents in Peru, it reinforced that a state is accountable for agents' violations. So, in Velasquez, Rodriguez, and Honduras emphasized that states are responsible for agents' actions, even if those actions violate domestic law. So RCWA clearly holds Myanmar accountable for its military actions, as these are attributed to the state under Article 4 and 7.
So let's move to the second issue. The second issue will be whether Myanmar has breached its obligation by not preventing the act of genocide towards the people of Rohingya. Based on the findings shown by Gambia, it can be seen that Myanmar committed and continued to commit the act of genocide towards the people in Rohingya. Besides, when Gambia tried to bring up the case to the court, Myanmar mentioned that it has a reservation upon Article 7 of Genocide Convention, so that Myanmar is not bound to the convention in order to escape the liability. In fact, Myanmar is a party to the convention. Therefore, Myanmar has the obligation to prevent such malicious events to occur. Based on the case of the prosecutor and Jean Paul Akayesu, genocide is a crime under international law and it was against the Genocide Convention. According to Article 12 of RCWA, the article provides that state is deemed to be breached its obligation when the state has failed to comply with its obligation, while Article 14 Clause 3 mentioned that the state has breached its obligation when the state has failed to prevent such events to occur. Therefore, it can be seen from the fact that Myanmar, as the party to the Genocide Convention, does not take any action to prevent such act. Therefore, there is a breach of obligation on by Myanmar. Besides that, the court had held that Myanmar has obligation under Article 9 of the Genocide Convention, as Myanmar does not make any reservation on this provision. Therefore, Article 13 of RCWA apply because at the time Myanmar committed genocide, Myanmar is bound to Article 9 of the Convention. As Myanmar has the obligation to the Genocide Convention and Myanmar has breached its obligation, Myanmar is considered as breached its obligation by committing series of wrongful acts as stipulated in Article 15 of RCWA. Therefore, according to Article 30, 40, and 41 of RCWA, Myanmar should cease the act of genocide. According to the case of US and Iran, Nicaragua, and US, both of the court has held that the state which commit the wrongful act must cease the act and make reparation for the injury. In conclusion, Myanmar has breached its obligation by not preventing the act of genocide to occur towards the people in Rohingya.
The third issue is whether the Gambia as a non-injured state has the right to bring up the case before the International Court of Justice. Article 48 Clause 1 Subclause A of RCWA allowed that any state other than an injured state is entitled to invoke the responsibility of another state if the obligation breached is owed to a group of states, including that state, and is established for the protection of a collective interest of the group and may claim for the responsible state. As illustrated in the case of East Timor, Portugal brought a case against Australia. Despite having no dispute with the state, Portugal argued that the treaty entered by Australia and Indonesia has violated the rights of the East Timorese people by ignoring the interests of the people. The effort of Portugal has highlighted the potential applicability of the RCWA by a non-injured state. According to Article 8 of the Genocide Convention, Gambia as a party to the Genocide Convention has the right to invoke responsibility to another state party, Myanmar, as long as Gambia's action is considered appropriate to prevent the act of genocide towards the Rohingya group in Myanmar. Gambia presumed themselves to be justified to bring an action against Myanmar in ICJ on behalf of the Rohingya group. Besides, this approach is consistent with the findings in the case of Belgium against Senegal. The court observed that the relevant provisions in the convention against torture were similar to those in the Genocide Convention. The court held that these provisions generated obligations which may be defined as obligations ega on partes, in the sense that each state party has an interest in compliance with them in any given case. In line with this principle, although Gambia was the non-injured state in this case, by the reason of both states are the party to Genocide Convention, Gambia is entitled to bring an action against Myanmar for its failure in its obligation to prevent and punish genocide in its states.
I'm the person who in charge to elaborate about the possibility of the court decision in state accountability. So we can refer to the case of the Gambia vs Myanmar. The International Court of Justice demonstrate how an injured state can hold other accountable under international law, particularly the Genocide Convention 1948. Under Article 9 of the Genocide Convention, dispute about its application can be brought to the ICJ, even by states that are not directly affected. This was the basis of the Gambia's case against Myanmar, where the court affirmed the right of non-injured states to act in the face of genocide. Moreover, Article 48 of the responsibility of state for internationally wrongful act support disenabling states to invoke responsibility for breach of obligation out to the international community, such as genocide. The ICJ's provisional measures against Myanmar require immediate action to prevent further genocide, reinforcing its authority to enforce international norms. This case sets a crucial legal precedent, highlight that violations like genocide are not just national concern, but global ones. It shows that states, through international legal mechanism, can act to protect humanity, ensuring that those who commit serious violation can be held accountable, no matter where they are.
Limitation of the International Court of Justice decision. In paragraph 33 to 26 of the report, Myanmar argued that the Gambia's case lacked legitimacy because it was not directly affected by the alleged genocide and acted as the proxy for the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation (OIC). Although the ICJ affirmed the Gambia's standing on the basis on the erga omnes parties nature of the Genocide Convention, this ruling underscores a limited scope for non-injured parties. The ICJ recognition of the Gambia standing relied on the specific obligation erga omnes parties enshrined in the Genocide Convention. This framework does not necessarily extend to other treaties or general international obligation, meaning non-injured state may face significant barriers in bringing cases under different legal instruments. Additionally, Myanmar's jurisdiction objections highlight the procedural vulnerabilities of such cases, as the legitimacy of non-injured state invoking responsibility may still be contested in the future dispute. The ICJ's decision in the Gambia and Myanmar highlights the limitation inherent in its role as a judicial body in addressing grave violation of the international law.
Comparative analysis. The International Court of Justice ruling in the Gambia vs Myanmar serve as an example of the court's possibilities and limitations in holding states accountable for violation of international law, especially those outlined in the Genocide Convention, by acknowledging responsibilities erga omnes partes which allow non-injured states to act on behalf of the international community to redress serious violations like genocide. The case demonstrates the ICJ's potential to increase accountability. This legal framework established a vital precedent for collective action and strengthened the idea that genocide and other atrocities are of global concern, by giving states a way to redress violation of international norm when directly impacted states are unable or unwilling to take action. However, the ruling also highlights structural and procedural limitations. The ICJ relies on state compliance and international pressures to secure adherence to its verdicts because it lacks direct enforcement measures. Although the acknowledgement of non-injured states standing is important, its wider significance is limited because it is limited to particular settings such as the Genocide Convention and does not always apply to other treaties or general international duties. The procedural weaknesses of this instance and the difficulties of proving legitimacy in subsequent disputes are further illustrated by jurisdictional issues such as Myanmar's objection to the Gambia's standing. Furthermore, the ICJ's capacity to provide victims with prompt justice is constrained by its emphasis on averting future harm rather than correcting past violation. Its limited investigation ability is reflected in its reliance on outside reports and evidence provided by the parties, which may impede true adjudication of complicated offences. Even while ruling establishes a significant precedent, this drawback shows that in order to completely accomplish justice and accountability for serious violation of international law, further measures are required, such as stronger enforcement structures and international cooperation.
So in conclusion, this case, the Gambia against Myanmar case, highlights the ICJ role in addressing state accountability for genocide and the obligations erga omnes partes. By allowing the non-injured state to act, the court reaffirmed the collective responsibility of the International Committee to uphold fundamental rights. While the decision sets important legal precedents, it also reveals limitations, including reliance on state compliance and procedural constraints. The case underscores the need for stronger international mechanism to enforce accountability and protect vulnerable populations effectively. Thank you.